My name is Maya Babu, and I'm chair of the Resident and Associate Society of the American College of Surgeons. And I am very pleased to welcome you to tonight's webinar. We are very excited to have Dr. Ravi Goel joining us to talk about protecting your online reputation. Before I introduce Dr. Goel, I did want to make mention that all of these webinars in our series will be archived on the American College of Surgeons website so that you can review this material at a later date. Additionally, the Resident and Associate Society is always looking for leaders and folks interested in positions within the college, as well as opportunities and projects related to surgical training, education, communications, and membership. If you're interested, we would love to have your involvement. We'll talk more about this at the end of tonight's webinar. Without further ado, let me introduce to you Ravi Goel. Ravi Goel graduated with a BA in Ethics, Politics, and Economics from Yale University. Dr. Goel earned a medical degree from the Robert Wood Johnson Medical School and completed an ophthalmology residency at the Greater Baltimore Medical Center. Dr. Goel is in private practice in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, and a clinical instructor at the Wills Eye Hospital in Philadelphia. He is past chair of the American Medical Association's Young Physicians section. He is a recipient of the AMA Foundation Excellence in Medicine Leadership Award, the American Academy of Ophthalmology Achievement Award, and the Secretariat Award. He is a past president of the New Jersey Academy of Ophthalmology. He is a member of the AMA Ophthalmology Section Council. He is also a member of the New Jersey Governor's School Board of Overseers, director of the American Academy of Ophthalmic Executives, and a member of the Yale University Development Council. On a personal note, I've known Ravi for many years, and I am thrilled that he's able to join us. He really is an expert in this area and will, I'm sure, dazzle us with his knowledge. Thanks, Ravi.
Thank you, Maya. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, great.
Yes, Maya?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, I want to thank Allison and Maya and the American College of Surgeons, young surgeons, for allowing me to join you this evening. I've been in private practice for about 15 years. And for many years, in terms of getting patient referrals, I get them from other colleagues, patients, word of mouth, etc. Every year, once a year, I would Google myself and I'd try to find out what my online reputation was. When I first looked at this data, nowadays there are about 40 to 50 online sites that include doctors' reviews or ratings. In a recent article in JAMA, they surveyed patients to find out what were the important factors you had in selecting a physician. I think you compare them in three different boxes. One is, do they accept my insurance? Do they have a convenient office location? The second set is sort of the word of mouth. Do I trust the practice group? And that third set down below, you see about 59% looked at important factors of a physician's ratings on websites. Now, if you dig deeper and you say, well, are you aware of rating websites? Now, this is back from about 2-3 years ago, but in this JAMA article, 65% of patients were aware that there were physician rating sites. About a third of them sought ratings. 93% of those patients found the information to be useful, but only 5% submitted ratings, and of that, about 83% were gave positive or neutral ratings. So does online reputation matter? Well, we think of ourselves as being consumers of healthcare and consumers of other products. If you see right here in the second column, doctor or dentist, the reputation that the doctors or dentists have as small business owners or even members of healthcare systems has become increasingly important over the last few years. You can see that there's in this as they drill down, they say that there's unequivocal evidence of the growing influence which online reviews have. What's even funnier about this survey from 2013 is the fact that that notion that you can't Yelp your doctor is no longer true. You actually can Yelp your doctor. The American Psychiatric Association is actually becoming increasingly concerned about online reviews of doctors. And they had at the Marriott Marquis in 2014, they had a workshop, Are You a Sitting Duck Online? What you can or can't do about negative reviews. Anna Fels, who's a writer for the New York Times, wrote, Do You Google Your Shrink? And in her article, she makes a mention of a patient who had a severe personality disorder that was seen in the ER and submitted actually a potentially career-devastating, destroying evaluation on a physician evaluation website. So one comment that was actually a New York Times pick said, it is the reviewer who's occasionally being unreasonable, surly, or sometimes just plain yes crazy. And one psychiatrist wrote in saying, please print my letter so that when my patients Google me, they'll see that I was published in the New York Times. So what's been my experience? Well, basically, for many years, as I mentioned, I was afraid of my online, I was afraid of just sort of Googling myself. So back in 2012, I Googled myself. I found that if you look at the top 6 websites that come up when I Googled my first name, my last name, and MD, the first 2 were my practice website. The third hit came out to be a YouTube site. But number 4 was a site called Health Grades. 5 was LinkedIn, and 6 was Twitter. Then I started Googling myself using different variations of my name, my first name, last name with an MD, MD rating, and health grades. And I found the same pattern, that among the top 6 search results was this health grade, was this physician rating site. My goal, my personal goal became to optimize the top page of my Google search. What that meant was I Googled myself in 2012 and 2014, and I found that if you look at in 2014, among the top 24 search results on the first and second page of Google for my first name, last name, and MD, 60% of them were physician rating sites. So I found that this was increasingly important as a private practice ophthalmologist, that patients were clicking onto these sites. So I made a goal that I wanted this information to be as complete as possible. The first thing that I did was I asked patients to review me. Now, I didn't ask patients to review me on a day when I was particularly behind, an hour or 2 behind, etc. I asked happy, satisfied patients to review me. Health Grades is one site that actually gives you these review cards you can hand to patients. Also, I engage in social media. On my personal Facebook page and on my Twitter page, I posted links and I asked patients to review me. And then I use this, what you'll see, this bit.ly web link, which I use to look at analytics, which I'll come up to, which I'll mention upcoming. But I asked patients who are happy and satisfied to review me. I also posted on my practice website and on some YouTube videos that I posted for patient education. I included bit.ly links to help track statistics. I did not do what a colleague in somewhere in the country did, in which he offers a $10 Starbucks gift card to patients who are happy cataract surgery patients to review him. I think this may actually violate Stark as being sort of a kickback. Now, what were my results? In March of 2011, if you looked at Cherry Hill specialists within 25 miles of my office, you'd come up with about 45,641 providers within a 25-mile radius of my office. Among the 45, this is doctors, nurse practitioners, physical therapists, etc., dentists, nurses, etc. Among all of those 45,000, I ranked number 22. So I was feeling pretty good. Eventually, I hit 37 reviews in early 2012, and I was asked to participate in a panel in Washington, D.C. at our National Ophthalmology Leadership Meeting. And I thought to myself, I have 37 reviews. I'm doing pretty good locally. I wonder how I'm doing nationally. So I made a map of the U.S., and I said, these are the highest number of 5-star ratings for an ophthalmologist on Health Grades. And I was ranked top in the state of New Jersey by asking happy, satisfied patients to review me online. And I've asked hundreds of patients to do this. Only about 37 came through, or posted reviews. Now, I have a personal history in U.S. history, and I collect historical documents. So I thought, let me just look at how I compare to colleagues in the original 13 colonies. And looking at these numbers, and these are physician ophthalmology colleagues who had the highest number of 5-star reviews in their state. I was feeling pretty good because I ranked first among the 13 colonies. I then looked at half the states in the country, and what shocked me was that there was a physician in Minnesota had 35 reviews, had 35 5-stars. But down in Florida, which is a high volume state for ophthalmology, the top ophthalmologist only had 12 reviews. I was still ranked number 1 on the east side of the United States. I went all the way across the country, and I found a colleague in California who had 46 5-star reviews. And it was a week before this panel, so I gave her a call. I said, Madhu, what do you do to get these patient reviews and get these 46 profiles? And she said, Ravi, all I do is I ask happy, satisfied patients, she's an oculoplastic surgeon, to review her. This is not unlike what friends of mine have done in other industries. I have a friend of mine who's a writer in Chicago, and she wrote a cookbook. And you can see in the box in the lower right, she's asking her friends from her Kickstarter campaign, would you consider writing a positive review on Amazon, because we're struggling writers, and more eyeballs gives us better traction. Every single review matters so much. Or another friend of mine who's an architect and was trying to win this prize with this public voting on for architects, and he actually engaged his Facebook friends, and he ended up winning that prize. When I gave this talk, a med school classmate of mine who's an ophthalmologist in Arizona used the techniques that I described. And if you look down at Arizona, in 2012, when I gave the talk, it was number 15. And there's a picture of my friend Jeff Maltzman, who is at the time in 2014, he had gone from having very low ranks to having 82 5-star reviews, and he basically owned the state. And you'll see how different states, with 2 years after I did my initial survey in the state of California, 2 ophthalmology colleagues had 89 or 117 reviews. I gave this talk in Florida and to the Florida Society of Ophthalmology Leadership Group. And here again, I found that there was great disparity in different parts of Florida. I ranked the top 10 living areas, and I showed them how there were just some ophthalmologists who were just private practice mostly in ophthalmology, who were just killing it. They were getting 117 in Port St. Lucie, and that's number 1. And number 2 is an ophthalmologist who has only 5 reviews. I gave this talk in North Carolina. Same thing. I found that in Charlotte, there was a colleague who had 71 reviews. His average rating was a 4.8, and he had NP. He had no photo to his profile, and I'll come up to that in my Pearl section. But if you go through different areas in terms of population, and you rank and you do a survey when you enter an area, you can figure out how you rank with other colleagues. I gave a talk in Texas, same thing. There was an ophthalmologist in Houston who had 85 reviews, and there was an ophthalmologist in Arlington who had 28. And everything in between, you see how colleagues rank in their own communities. When I gave this talk in Washington State, I actually looked at every specialty. I was giving this to young physicians in general. And what was interesting to me is you find that in psychiatry, there was a psychiatrist who had 84 reviews, but what was most intriguing was just above that, anesthesiology, they had very little reviews, which would make sense because you usually don't know your anesthesiologist. But if you go lower, you'll see that the general surgeons had more reviews than the ophthalmologists. One had 21 reviews, one had 10, one had 23. This is what drives healthcare in the marketplace today. I gave this talk to a group of about a dozen ear, nose, and throat colleagues locally, and they have 14 offices, 12 or 14 offices. And I showed them how in this grid, basically only one of the 42 boxes were one of the ENT doctors in their practice. And they were pretty shocked by that because they were not engaging their own social media and online reputation to help build their practice. This is where patients are going. Remember, we go back to that original article I mentioned from 2014. Patients, the most important thing is, do they accept my insurance? Their years of practice, they're a trusted member, etc. But physician ratings on websites is becoming increasingly important. This made me realize that all politics is local, as is online search. So if you drill down even further in this slide, you'll find that if you search my name today, this is all I care about now. If you search my name as an ophthalmologist in Cherry Hill, or I have a teaching appointment at Wills Eye Hospital in Philadelphia, I'm satisfied being the first or the second in those two geographic areas because that's where my patients typically come from. There is no filter on the internet. Reviews live forever. I kind of yearn for the good old days when a patient left a typed letter at the front desk saying that he was leaving me because of the length of the office visit. He talked about how long he had to wait, et cetera, et cetera. This is just a reality of practice, which I apologize for. But this is something that we kind of hope for, where the patient leaves a letter, they go on their way. I'm actually a Facebook friend with this patient now, but if you, this is what we hope for. This is what hurts. This office is very disorganized and unprofessional. I arrived for an appointment and was told that there were no doctors available. They were all at a conference. You can actually, please don't Google this because I don't want it to go up higher in the rankings. But my practice partner came into my office on a Monday morning and she read this to me. She said, Ravi, we got flamed by a patient on Friday. I read this review by the patient. I sat back, smiled, looked at her, and I said, Michelle, the patient's right. I could totally see this happening in our office. Long story short, but 3 of the ophthalmologists in my practice were attending the Wills Eye National Meeting, the meeting in Philadelphia. We didn't have a workable number for this patient. She showed up. She took a day off from work. We basically, and I could sort of see how from a staffing standpoint, the patient felt that she wasn't treated fairly at that visit. But now this review basically lives forever. So what's the solution? One colleague in Pain Physician in 2009 suggested that we create a contract with patients. And then the contract says the 4 things listed, where doctor shall provide services to patient, patient assigns copyright to doctor for public statements, patient sets forth, et cetera, and doctor agrees to abide by the code of ethics. So some doctors actually did this, 2009. I don't suggest this at all. The media had a field day on this. In fact, RateMDs.com had what they call the gag contract wall of shame, where they said that, and NBC News, CBS, et cetera, saying that docs are trying to stifle patient rants on websites. Simple solution is just to look at a Google Analytics page. This is free. You can look at to see how your reviews measure across websites. And this also, if you go to my Google page, you'll see, number 2, 3, and 4, which says that he's a good doctor, and I was, no one really, eyes aren't really drawn to that too often. Number 1 is the same complaint that came from the patient who left a letter at the front desk. He thought I was a good doctor, but he had problems with my billing. He said that the billing was wrong, and he was frustrated, etc. This is not unlike what happens with colleagues around the country. Here's a colleague of mine in Oregon. There are 2 punchlines of this story. A patient said she took her 2 kids. She had 3 kids, waited 3 hours in an office. She went home and posted a review about this practice on her Facebook page. There are 2 punchlines. First of all, there's a building in Oregon in which there are 2 separate ophthalmology practices that have their practices. And the patient, there's practice number A and practice number B. The patient had an appointment with practice number A, sat in the waiting room of practice number A, went home and wrote the review on the Facebook page for practice number B. So she actually submitted the review for a different practice, the practice next door. The second punchline is that practice number B's has an employee whose daughter or son works for Facebook. And they tried to get the review removed, and Facebook refused to remove the review. So even though this, and actually practice number A called the patient, said you put the review on the wrong page, and the patient still refused to remove the review. So what's the solution? I have a friend of mine in North Jersey. She was sitting in the waiting room, and she says, love it when you come to a doctor's office and you're at the front desk and no one says anything. And she was looking to get orthodontics braces for her 2 kids. Braces, are for 2 kids is easily in the 5 figures. And this is how she was judging the practice. So reviews drive patient behavior, and there is professional risk to an unmanaged presence. I found that, I have these YouTube videos when I educate patients about cataract surgery, which has saved me a lot of time in terms of patient education. I found that by tracking on my YouTube page, I have these bit.ly statistics, and I can find how patients are reaching HealthGrade's site. As an aside, I started these YouTube videos about in 2010. As of this month, I have about 130,000 views, about 66,000 last year. So by using these bit.ly links to my page, I found that 250 clicks to my rating page came from either Facebook or YouTube. So about 190. The 134 from Facebook, about 55 clips came by posting my links onto Facebook and YouTube and other social media, Twitter also. These ratings are becoming increasingly important for the social media and for the physician rating sites as well, because this drives dollars, and they sell ads to healthcare systems which can advertise on their site. So now if you actually go to HealthGrades, you'll get a pop-up. Would you recommend Dr. Watson to family and friends? The reason why I took a screenshot of this is because actually there was an error. I'm not Dr. Watson, I'm Dr. Goel. So I actually tweeted to HealthGrades that they made an error in their algorithm somewhere. All politics is local. For me now, I have this video which last year had about 36,000 YouTube views, but what was helpful for me was knowing that about 1,000 of them had come from patients or consumers or family members who were in the state of New Jersey. With that background, I'd like to give you 5 pearls to protect your online reputation. Pearl number 1, one professional photo. Your image is your brand, and your brand should be consistent across all websites. No matter which website you land on, there are companies, as I showed you, the 60% of the first 2 pages of Google are using your name, your image, and your brand basically to sell advertising dollars and to create reviews for you. The best thing you can do is to control that initially with one photograph. This should never happen. You should never land on a page for a physician and not see a photo of that physician. It doesn't matter how many photos you have of yourself online. I recommend that it doesn't matter if you meet the president, you meet the president, you meet the president, or you play golf with the president. I still think you should only have one professional photo of yourself online. In my view, that is what I call the Woody Allen rule. And usually when I give this talk live, I ask, does anyone know what the Woody Allen rule? But the old Woody Allen rule is that 90% of success is showing up. And I think you show up on the internet with one professional photo. Pearl number 1 star is that on some websites, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook allow header backgrounds. And I think especially for surgeons, fellow surgeons, these types of images can help you to create your image and your brand, especially when you go out and practice. If you join a health system, many of you will become employed physicians for health systems, and I highly recommend you still build your personal brand within health systems no matter where you go. Pearl number 1, that's 1 star. Pearl number 1 double star, which I just added today, is that you want to update your professional photo from time to time. So I'm actually in the process of transitioning my 2011 photo to my 2016 photo. That's pearl number 1, one professional photo. Pearl number 2, content curation. Update your profiles. This is the minimum. Every single site that has your name and your image and your brand should be complete with reliable and factual information. So you want to Google your name multiple different ways using your name, MD, DO, rating, reviews, etc. Find all the sites that have your name, your hospital, professional association, American College of Surgeons, etc., and make sure that that information is complete. Because patients who shop, they'll spend hours on the internet looking for a physician, and I often get patients who come to me saying, you have a very good online presence. So Google your name multiple different ways. Find out what is sort of the page 1, page 2. If you want to go to page 3 on Google, most consumers don't go past the first 3 hits on a Google search. I think like 80 or 90% don't go past the first page. However, you will occasionally find sites beyond the first page which do have your name, your image, and your brand, which you want to make sure is consistent. You want to update your practice website. This is my practice website, which hopefully will rest in peace. This was my cousin in India's web designer, designed my practice website for 8 years. We finally got a professional site, which is dynamic. We added a link for the My Online Clinic, which is for meaningful use, stage 2, which is important. The one pearl I'll give you in pearl number 2, which is probably the most important, is Google Maps. When you go out and practice, you want to identify and claim your profile, but you will not be able to do that based on a phone number. So when you find your name, or sometimes you have to add your name to Google Maps or to Google Places, you want to find the page where it says Manage This Page in the lower right-hand corner. And what you want to do is you want to click on that page and tell them that you don't have a phone number where they can verify it, because usually it goes into a voicemail system. You want to have them send you a postcard. They'll send you a postcard which will have a verification code. This will take a few days, but you can then go back to Google and you can control your web presence on Google Business, Google Places, Google Maps. It's honestly, it's probably practice gold to be able to do that. You then can go back to Google Places, and Google treats physicians as small businesses, so they want to know, you describe your practice, which category you're in, etc. And you want to have your hours of business, payment types, insurance types, etc. Because this will show up in Google searches. You can see the difference between this photo, this landing page on Google Places, and this landing page, where everything just looks much more professional and it just looks complete. And you'll see, if you do this often, if you do this properly, in the right-hand corner you'll see you may actually get that Google search box that comes up in the right-hand corner. Don't think that and then when patients type in your name, they'll get a link to this, the red listing page, which will have your name and your exact location. I know personally, I use the iPhone and Google Maps all the time to go somewhere, and this has become very valuable for me, for me to find places to go, but also for patients. Health Grades, as I've mentioned, has you can update your profile for free. You go up into the upper right-hand corner. Many of you, you're young physicians, so when you start out in practice, you can actually control multiple profiles. So if you join a group of 6 other surgeons, you can be the person or the marketing person. You can teach them how to update what specialties you have within surgery, general surgery, colorectal, transplant, etc. And I know I was able to update my profile in Health Grades. When I was giving this talk a few years ago, I found mistakes on Vitals.com with all 3 profiles. My main practice page had a state number. The second profile address was the surgery center where I operate. The third was a resident clinic. I'm not getting patients in my practice with any of those numbers or any of those addresses because they were all wrong, so I had to correct it. Rate MDs listed me as being a part of Gene's Hospital. Never. And I had to correct that, and they came back with virtual hospital. And I had to correct it again to make it my photo, my hospital affiliations, to make sure everything was proper. Even on tonight's webinar, I had to make a little correction because there is a difference between my profile on the left and my profile on the right. I'm actually not FACS, so I asked that be corrected, and it was for the webinar. So a funny thing is that in California you can actually rate an MD, but you can't rate the foie gras because that's actually not allowed in California. Some websites allow you to add links to video content. So MD.com, and you want to claim your profile on MD.com also, but you can add links to video content. In my case, I added my YouTube videos. Angie's List, you can also claim your profile for free. This is important for healthcare systems also. I'm at Wills Eye Hospital, which has consistently been ranked number 2 or 3 in the country as an eye hospital. I got a letter from an email from the chairman a few years ago saying that she was shocked to see how inaccurately our faculty and staff entries are listed. I mean, if you go to the number 1 website, Bascom Palmer, the reason why it's a top priority is because verifying that all this information is correct now can drive ratings for hospital systems and healthcare systems. That's why it's very important to keep that information proper and up to date. Pearl number 3, patient engagement. Educate your promoters. This is a 90-plus-year-old patient in whom I performed cataract surgery on. He'd been a patient of mine for 10-plus years, and his son came in and said, Dr. Goel, thank you so much. My father can now use an iPad without glasses. And so this was sort of like, this sort of made it hit home in terms of how important vision was to my patients and my own patient outcomes. But I tend to push a lot of information home in terms of, I take advantage of free patient information online. We have a website called Get EyeSmart, which teaches patients about ophthalmology. I have my own YouTube site, and these health grade patient cards my friend in Arizona used to take his ratings up to 80 plus in Arizona. But here again, my YouTube channel, if you, I have a colleague locally who does that in general surgery, but if you have a bread and butter type of procedure, you might want to consider when you go out and practice, creating YouTube videos that help to promote you, because that is how a lot of patients will find you, and it can show up higher in Google search, and graphically I think it's much more pleasing. I have a patient education packet I give patients, and I actually ask them to check off which of my videos they watched prior to their consultation for patient appointments. This Get EyeSmart website is we have our national society, the American Academy of Ophthalmology, has a sort of like, it's almost like a Wikipedia for patient-friendly information. Pearl number 4: address your critics but stay positive. Never engage a patient online, because those comments you will have, especially if you go do a tit for tat, will be permanent. So I suggest having a practice plan in place on how to deal with your critics. Pick up the phone, give them a call. I think that I made a mistake with this patient who said that we were disorganized and unprofessional. I should have called the patient. I wish I had called her. I wish I had apologized. I wish I had given her sort of a VIP time slot, seen her before I saw other patients, just to sort of, because some patients can actually go in and remove an old review, and that would have ultimately been helpful for us. That is the success, that they remove their negative review. I decided to do the next best thing is that for the patient who said that they had problems with my billing, I said, thank you very much for bringing this to my attention. I'm sorry to hear that this happened, and I'm following up with my team. And I actually learned that because I tweeted to ZocDoc once when they kept calling me saying they had patients to refer to me, only to lead me into a sales call. I said, please don't trick my staff again. This is a tweet. And they replied to me and said, Dr. Goel, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We're sorry to hear that this happened and are following up with our team. Same response. Yelp once called me. When I updated my Yelp profile, I tweeted to Yelp that the Yelp made me feel like they were selling. They kind of had like this used car salesman approach to selling advertising, and the Yelp salesperson wrote me a written apology, and I deleted my tweet. Pearl number 5: strategic networking. Stay relevant. You want to stay relevant in your practice. Even as a resident, as a young surgeon, I highly recommend starting with a LinkedIn profile. LinkedIn now has 450 million members worldwide and 130 million members in the United States. And here again, it comes up on first page of Google, Google search, in terms of finding physicians. And this is a very professional website, which is helpful for helping to build your image and your brand. There is a first tweet for everything. My very first tweet was about Get EyeSmart, talking about how it was it's good for educating patients about their upcoming surgery. But I share content in my tweets and patient resources, things about EyeSmart floaters, stuff I enjoy collecting, that sort of stuff. Once tweeted from our ophthalmology meeting, and this ABC News correspondent correspondent retweeted my tweet to 34,000 people. Later, a friend of mine was actually appointed by Indiana Governor Pence to be the Surgeon General of Indiana, and I congratulated my friend Jerome Adams, and the AMA retweeted me to 419,000 followers. 2 years ago, I co-chaired a symposium in which, at our National Ophthalmology meeting, in which Senator Rand Paul, who's an ophthalmologist, spoke. I took a picture of him speaking as I'm on the dais. He retweeted me as he was speaking, meaning that his staffer, who was in the back of the room, retweeted me, and that was retweeted to 490,000 followers. I felt pretty good seeing that I had about 38,000 impressions from that one tweet over time. I felt pretty good until I saw this tweet and this hashtag, which is most impressive, and that is the I look like a surgeon hashtag. And I read, there's a very good article by a friend of mine, Catherine Hughes, who describes the history and evolution of this hashtag. And I suggest the article. I don't want to name the young surgeon and young residents who started this movement, although they're on this page. I don't want to miss anyone. But this hashtag, based on Twitter by surgical colleagues, has generated a staggering 284 million impressions in the last year. This started in the first week of August 2015, and as of yesterday, this had 284 million impressions. There is a role for Facebook, not only in your personal branding, but also in your practice branding. I have a personal Facebook profile. I don't have a public person or public figure profile, because I find that tends to be repetitive. But I do have a profile for my practice in which I'll share content in which patients can look at. There is also a role in online media and online articles. One friend of mine, Jennifer Shu, who's a pediatrician in Atlanta, she's a CNN reporter correspondent. Sometimes she'll interview me on ophthalmology type of topics, or sometimes I'll suggest topics that she look at. And occasionally she'll interview me in the past a couple times, and that's been helpful in terms of getting your building online content with your name attached to it. In addition, I think that the print media remains relevant. This first article, which says optometrists lack training for surgery, I published that article in my second year of practice, second or third year. I highly suggest that you do not write an article like the one that you see on your screen. I think that I lost dozens upon dozens of referring optometrists, but there was a big fight in New Jersey at the time about scope of practice, which is another passion of mine, in terms of patient safety and doing what's best for your patient. I know the American College of Surgeons deals with scope of practice all the time, and if you're advocating for your profession, sometimes you need to put that in writing and advocate at the State House and locally. But print media, in my mind, in my view, still remains relevant. And an occasional letter to the editor can get you a nice graphic, and patients do read it, I find. Finally, stay relevant in national meetings. We have in ophthalmology, we have an advocacy program where you're an advocate for ophthalmology and for patients. We lobby at the State House or nationally, or we make appointments with our legislators. Lecture young physicians as much as you can, free sessions. A friend of mine, Keith Ferrazzi, wrote this book, Never Eat Alone, which talks about the benefits of networking, which is to help others become successful, be generous, never keep score, follow up, and have fun. And in my mind, the success of online reputation management is when you control the outcome. Patients look for ratings and they find content. So now, when a patient Googles my name in the last year or two, and they type in my first name, my last name, and health grades, sure, health grades is going to come up as a top hit. But number 2, number 3, number 4 are graphically friendly YouTube videos, which is content that I want my patients to go to, and I want my patients to see in terms of becoming more informed about their disease process and their clinical care. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Babu, and with any questions.
Thank you. At this point, we will take questions. If If the audience has a question, please type that in the side box, and we will answer them one at a time. Ravi, while we're waiting for questions, do you recommend one social media platform over another? For instance, should surgeons have a place on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter? Do you recommend one over another?
I don't. I think you need to have a professional. Well, LinkedIn is a professional site. Twitter is Twitter. Your tweets are getting archived, so there is a sort of anything you post online, they can find it sort of in the through web crawling. So I think that you need a professional site for LinkedIn. Twitter can be your personal and professional. Facebook, I think you can keep private, or the Facebook business side, I think, is helpful in terms of finding practices and finding you. There's this thing called public figure, where you can add, you can create a public profile of yourself, or if you're in a group practice. I think that some practices, I think physicians in general are a little bit late to the game for that. You could use, thinking outside the box. If you become a plastic surgeon, you could use Instagram, other sort of medium to sort of share a lot of photos. If you create a lot of photos, I found that Instagram has actually been pretty good for ophthalmology, because we're a very, very visual specialty. So in terms of in terms of patient education, for education, I find that Twitter, in terms of learning ophthalmology or finding an interesting article or interesting case, I find my Twitter newsfeed to be very helpful. I subscribe to different ophthalmology sites or different surgical sites, and that it ends up being very 140 characters. You find a very 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 sort of interesting information.
Have you heard of Real Self? There's a question here from a young surgeon starting in plastic surgery and has been approached by a site called Real Self. What do you think of them?
I think that there are a lot of sites, and a lot of the Yellow Pages has sort of died. So Yellow Pages has gone online. So now there are a lot of sites that are trying to do a lot of Me Too type of, they want to create. It's all about impressions now. They sort of charge, we got a quote for let's say $1,000 for 100,000 impressions. So if a patient, and companies will sell they'll sell impressions of your name and your practice on these different websites. Everything I've shown you is free. This is stuff that I've done. I didn't get into search engine optimization, that sort of stuff, but those are all sort of separate things. But I haven't heard of Real Self, but I'm sure it's one of those types of sites that can help you, for plastic surgery. They might have some companies will have their platform will be they'll go to the market leader in each community, which does well for plastic surgery, or for in ophthalmology. You have a LASIK surgeon, they'll go for and they'll profile that person, geographically. So I haven't heard of Real Self. I'll look it up though.
And there's another one that's mentioned here in the questions, Patient Pop. Have you used services like that to manage your digital presence?
I've been approached by a company in San Diego. I won't mention their name, but there are companies that will do this for you, and they're not inexpensive. I think depending on I think that initially they're not going to do more than what I just showed, where they build your online presence, but they will push content for you. They'll retweet articles and this and that. I haven't heard of that service either, but there are businesses that will create a dashboard for you. If you go to, for example, if you go to if you go to Marriott hotels, every manager of a Marriott or Sheraton, Starwoods, whatever, in the morning they log into a site and they have a dashboard which shows all the feedback they've gotten on their hotel around the world that's been posted to multiple different sites. They aggregate all that data. There are friends of mine who have companies that do that, and so you'll know they're like, oh, a customer on TripAdvisor, said that the carpet was worn in this area, etc. So there are. This is not uncommon. I think it started in the business world, and it's moving closer to medicine. One site I didn't mention was actually, if you get a chance, like Cleveland Clinic has a site where they ask patients to review them after each visit, and that information is all public on the Cleveland Clinic site. So they've aggregated thousands of reviews of the physicians. But what's nice is that they can then control that data, and then they can use it to make improvements or to figure out what's working, what's not working.
So you bring up a good point. There's a question here about managing your online reputation as an employed surgeon. Is there a difference between?
Yes, and that's why the reason why I mentioned this, so the reason why I mentioned this is because I gave this talk at the AMA to the Young Physician section 2 years ago, and I was stumped by the question because I'd never heard of it, where an employed physician said, I've been told by marketing, I've been told by the healthcare system that I am not allowed to do this. What do I do? And I've been told I'm not allowed to go to health grades. I'm not allowed to update my profile. So what I suggest you do is that before you enter into those agreements, those contracts, that you have an online presence. So but before you leave residency, it's freedom. You can update your profiles. But you might want to check your contracts as an employed physician, because you may not have the ability to control those sites by contract with your employer. And I don't know the answer to that, because I think that doesn't strike me as being. I think that, and this is my personal opinion, but I think that employed physicians, healthcare systems have very little incentive to promote employed physicians, because they're basically saying, call 1-800 this healthcare system, and you're going to see a colorectal surgeon tomorrow. You're going to see the best guy in the area. If that surgeon leaves, they don't want a name associated with that. They're just going to send you the next guy. But I think that as an individual surgeon, as an individual physician, I highly suggest that you create your own brand, which is not that difficult to do, but you do, no matter where you go, you want to look at your contracts closely, because it may state that you're not supposed to do that. I would, and if somebody has something in their contract, please email me. I'd love to see it. But that I have heard of that. Good.
So how many hours a week do you spend doing online optimization?
I spend too much time on this. I basically, initially I think that creating, these, getting a professional photo, make sure my address is correct on on the top websites. That's relatively easy. I think at this point I don't need to spend much time on it. I Google myself probably every few months, maybe once. I suggest once a month initially. Looking, I don't think you have to do it more than that. I think that in terms of creating content, I think is more important. I didn't mention the blogging and that sort of stuff. But if you want, if you have a passion for thyroid cancer, and you could start blogging about that. Make sure you're HIPAA compliant. But Twitter, with the I look like a surgeon. Those are there are ways to make yourself well known. In terms of sort of building your brand, and I'll tell you that basically my point is that Twitter makes you love somebody, Facebook makes you hate them. So people look at the tweets that you tweet looking for quality information that they can learn from. Somebody will tweet a good case that they've, like a good surgical case that they've seen, or an article, and I tend to follow high quality tweeters, whereas Facebook, Facebook's much more, in my view, it's more of a personal part of your personal space. But in terms of how many hours, I think initially you should invest the time, because I think that there can be low-hanging fruit, and I think that it can, in terms of dollar cost averaging, you see, if you go to Healthgrades now, Healthgrades changed their algorithm. So at one point I had 50 reviews, and then they changed their algorithm, so they took away old reviews. So now I'm somewhere in the 30s. I've actually forgotten about it. I don't ask patients to review me anymore, because I'm happy with my number of with my ranking compared to my peers in the area. So I think I could go full steam ahead and try to get over 100, but it just hasn't. I've had other priorities.
So do you recommend changing or canceling your personal Facebook family and friends profile, or opening up a new profile for professional purposes?
Well, I've seen that, like, if you're really personally, I link to Facebook with a dummy email account. So no one can find me based on just an email address search, and no one can find me on Google using in your Facebook security, it's turned off. You won't get my page on based on a Google search. But I have a lot of friends, surgeons, etc., who have made up names on their Facebook personal page, and Facebook's always changing their security. So I think that they make it much more difficult. But the point I'd like to make is that any photo you ever post on Facebook, you should be comfortable with the State Board of Medical Examiners seeing that photo. And I will occasionally, because I've been going to AMA meetings for 20 years, I will occasionally email friends of mine who are medical students and residents saying, that case you just posted, you're in the ER, and oh my God, I can't believe this patient came in, whatever, like a fish hook in their lip or whatever. Like, it's sort of like there may be some serious HIPAA violations with those photos. So I strongly suggest that but then again, social media. So if you want to enjoy it also. So you can the best thing to do is once you friend somebody back, it's hard to unfriend them. So you want to be as private as possible. Maybe use a different email address, and maybe if you really want to use a code name for yourself.
So is there a way that you've been able to measure any of this? Do you know that that these practices or this presence on these social media sites translates into referrals?
Yes, and that's all from every new patient I see. I ask how they heard of me, and I haven't measured that. I haven't measured quantitatively, but that many of my patient referrals many of my new patient exams each week are from people saying, I found you on the internet, or most commonly they actually say, I found you from my insurance website. You're my insurance. So, but definitely, I think that these physician rating sites, I've been able to measure it anecdotally. I guess it'd be hard to do. You could find an algorithm page. You might be able to find a page to see how many people have looked at your page on Healthgrades. I'll have to look that up. But I can tell you, it's worked for me personally. Having a complete profile, and even also having on my practice page. If you're bored, go to my practice website, and you'll see that my profile is complete. And look at my practice partner. Her profile is about 2 sentences, and patients do comment on that.
So is there a liability in answering medical questions on a message board to help you build your online presence? The question is about how Real Self and other plastic surgery websites use these message boarding places to build their providers' profiles.
Is there? I mean, I think that you want to make sure that you look at the HIPAA rules and make sure you're HIPAA compliant in terms of like patient privacy. And I guess it'd be the same thing as the rules would be the same as having remote physician consultation. So I don't know. I think you want to, if you're just giving your opinion on a message board, I guess it would depend on how detailed it is and how you want to make sure that you haven't established a doctor-patient relationship. If a patient, if a patient's asking you a question on a physician message board, it's and the patient in your local community, you may establish a doctor-patient relationship by doing that. Just be careful.
And then here's another one, sort of, addressing some of the challenges. How do you address reviews that claim you are a bad doctor?
Here again, I mean, I think that if you today, as I was preparing the talk, I went to Yelp and found a doctor in the who had in plastic surgery type stuff that was having many negative reviews. I mean, you can't. Patients are protected by freedom of speech, I think, and I think there's been a recent court case that says that also. So you want to, the part of the point of my talk is you don't want to get to the point where the only review you have is that one bad review. You want to build up your sort of your armamentarium, as they say, your database. You want to have a number of reviews to hopefully bury it that way, so that it and the other thing is that there was a Stanford study in the last few years that showed that patients expect that. They expect doctors to have negative reviews. But you're not going to ignore a hotel because it's not a 5-star or a restaurant. You expect to have some negative reviews from a bad experience, but you want to make sure that it's based on you have a high number of positive reviews which can counterbalance that negative review. The review sites won't remove them, generally speaking.
Do you have any techniques for asking your patients for reviews without being solicitous?
Yeah, that's a great question. I just ask. I mean, I think that in ophthalmology, 60% of my patients are Medicare, so they generally are. They come with a child or grandchild who brings them for their cataract appointment. And the way these websites work is a patient or their family member can review you. So if a patient is particularly happy with my practice and my services, I will ask them. And some patients who come to me because of review sites, I'll ask them also to review them. I think it's all part of the, it's part of the new. I don't feel bad about asking somebody to review me. And quite honestly, my yield is still pretty low. Might only be, I think you might have a less than 10% chance they'll actually go home and review you. Because there are multiple steps. They have to review it. They get an email about it. They got to click on the email that it was truly their review. So I just, you can do that, or you can have the marketing person do it in your practice. One thing that my next frontier is actually to have. We're going to add a patient review on my practice page, so that if a patient ranks me a 4 or 5, we'll ask they'll go to a next page saying, "Thank you for your positive review. Would you mind pushing it? Would you mind if we push it to these sites?" If they rank us a number 1 or 2, we'll say, "Oh, thank you for your feedback. Is there anything else that we can, that you'd like to tell us?" And that would generate an email to the practice. So that I have ophthalmology colleagues who are doing that. I just have to add that to my site. That's a good way to sort of Yeah, I think if patients feel like they've been heard, that's probably the more important issue.
All right, thank you so much. Well, we're at the end of our hour, and I wanted to thank everyone for logging in and for joining us tonight, and for these great questions, and of course for our presenter, Dr. Goel, for this illuminating discussion, because it really translates, you know, not only into surgery and medicine, but really into any online presence that somebody might have. So I wanted to invite everyone to log back in on Thursday night this week to hear a presentation from Dr. Scott Leckman on domestic international volunteerism, options for young surgeons who want to help. And we'll be starting that again Thursday, October 6th at 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thank you again, and if you would like to view this webinar, again, please log into the ACS website, www.facs.org, and scroll over to the Resident and Associate Society onto the webinar section, and you'll see this webinar recorded there. Thanks again, and have a good night.
Thank you.
Hey, Alison, Michelle?